Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Digital Frontiers podcast series. I'm very pleased to be welcoming back this series. I know we've been missing in action for a while, but we will be bringing this back as a constant in our resources that we share with our community. So my name is Deborah Ogilvie-Root, and I am the Chief Commercial Officer for Digital Frontiers. Sarah is the Divisional Director of Community and Continuous Professional Development, and she's going to explain to us exactly what that long title means in a short while. But she is also the CEO of the Alliance for Digital Finance Associations. Sarah, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Deborah, and it's a pleasure to be on the opposite side for once, answering the questions rather than asking them.
Well, I must say I'm definitely out of practice, so we're going to have to do a few more of these podcasts to get into the swing of things.
You'll soon be up to speed. No, I've no doubts there, Deborah.
Thank you. Okay, so let's jump in. In this conversation, what I really wanted to do was bring to light some of the work that you and your team do on the community side, but more importantly, from a continuous professional development perspective. We know we hear this phrase used a lot, but I'm curious to see from your perspective, what does continuous professional development actually mean, and what are some of the activities that we bring to our students through the programs that we run?
Thanks, Deborah. So continuous professional development, or if we want to abbreviate, CPD, and quite often we do, because otherwise it does become a very long mouthful. So when we're, for the rest of the
tongue twister.
We'll use CPD. Basically, what that is the concept, the idea that we don't develop as an individual or as a professional once. It's actually an ongoing, continual process. And we need input and support and help to keep ourselves abreast of all of what's going on in our industry and to keep updated with all the developments that are happening. And when you look at certain professions, for example, accountants and doctors and nurses, there are often professional bodies that oversee that. And for me, one of the things that I really love about the work of Digital Frontiers is we're not looking at existing professions per se, but we're looking at new and emerging professions, things that didn't exist. Also, quite often things that are rapidly changing, right? A lot of the stuff we focus on is digital, and we know that new developments and things can change overnight, particularly in those areas. So that means it's even more crucial for these emerging professions, and for professions that are rapidly evolving, growing, changing. It's important that we stay up to date with that, and that's what makes this concept of CPD really important. So if we look at it from a digital finance perspective, because obviously that's where we've been working on this concept of CPD, even I can't say it sometimes. That is, as particularly where we focus. If you think about things like central bank digital currency, cybersecurity, if you go back in time, 2, 3, 4 years ago, even they weren't concepts we're talking about as much as we do right now. So continuous professional development, the aim of it is to keep anyone up to date. Of course, we particularly sort of, do kind of hone in on and focus in on our Digital Frontiers alumni, as we feel, it's an important part of their process with us. We've often, put people in and supported people through our online courses, and we want to continue to update that knowledge. But our team also generally just looks at CPD generally of the digital finance professional. So regardless of whether you've been part of any of the DFIR courses or not, our doors are always open for people. So the kind of things, Deborah, that we're doing, on a monthly basis are things like webinars, for example. We normally have a couple of webinars every month focusing on different topics to do with digital finance, new research, new opportunities, bringing panels together. It's, trying to have a more expert-led focus to the work that we do, giving people new opinions, inspiration, hopefully. We also have things like a cultivated knowledge bank on the Digital Frontiers Institute website, where there's around 1,300, 1,400 papers, links to papers, that so if people want to find out what's happening in the space of mobile money, you can use Google, obviously, Google is all of our friend, but what we also need to think about is when you Google something, you get so many, you may be overwhelmed with stuff. What we've done in our knowledge bank is cultivate what we think are the important things anybody working in digital finance and wanting to know about mobile money will have. So there's a great opportunity for people there. We have a community newsletter that goes out once a month, which tells people, it contains blogs. So obviously we have a blog site on the website as well, but we specifically put those into our newsletters. We will make sure that we've got things about what people should be reading, which obviously then links back to our knowledge bank, our webinars, our events. Getting something regularly in someone's mailbox is really important. Plus, we have things like our WhatsApp groups that keep people chatting both in country or in topic. We have the Leagues of Digital Finance, or the League of Gender Equity Changemakers. Both of those groups are global on LinkedIn, that people can chat, share with, whether that's jobs, blog posts, papers, ask questions to each other in the community. Those are sort of, I guess, some of those key things that we have, that we run regularly. We also have workshops that happen over 10 days, where we gather and convene people together, not to have just an expert-led conversation that maybe we would have in a webinar, but also peer discussion, because that concept of peer learning is really important as well. We can't always think that there are experts on topics. Actually, a lot of what we have to share is sharing with each other what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in Uganda, what's happening in Zimbabwe, and sort of trying to sort of learn from each other too. And so that peer-to-peer learning is really an important part. And I think that leads me into the kind of another part of the continuous professional development that we do, is the concept of a community of practice.
So, wow, I mean, that's quite a broad set of different tools that you're using there in the program, and different ways in which you're imparting knowledge. And, if I think about comprehensive capacity building, when you're establishing these new professions, etc., there's definitely the foundations that get laid in the training that is done in the classroom, whether that's at a university or, with DFI in our courses in online campus. But as you say, it's what happens after. How do you keep honing those skills? How do you keep building that body of knowledge, etc.? And learning from peers. And you mentioned communities of practice there, and I know from experience that communities of practice have become an incredibly valuable tool for us in terms of not only engaging with our alumni, but really broadening the impact that we can have in markets. But I know that, there's a lot of ways in which communities of practice are used globally. Maybe you can just give us, just to help us sort of establish how we use communities of practice, give us a run through of what we do.
Absolutely. So what makes a community practice special and different from just a bunch of people getting together is that it has to have a clear idea of who's in. So who are the community, has to have a clear idea of, what your topic you're going to be talking about, and also the idea of creating a body of knowledge or experience or expertise together. Those three things are what brings a community of practice together, as opposed to just a community or, peers. So when we're talking about community of practice, those are the things that we think of. So for us at Digital Frontiers, the communities were based predominantly on a country or geographic location. So for most of us communities, that will be one specific country, but we do have some that are regional, bringing people together. The topic is always very clear. So being on digital finance, or for others that are regional, that particular topic there is about regulation and supervision. So we have clearly identified topics, we have a clearly identified community, and the purpose is very much for those communities to generate and share best practice within that sphere. So that's what makes a community of practice quite different. with ours, they have been evolving over a number of years. So the one thing also to remember about community of practice is it takes time to form, to bond and produce. It's not something that can happen overnight. So, you're looking at, a little, sort of it being an investment for something that's going to grow and develop over time. So our communities of practice were originally started around our foundational courses under our Certified Digital Finance Practitioner Program. So the Certificate in Digital Money and Leading Digital Money Markets. And we were really amazed at how well those community of practices were attended, how useful people found them. 80-90% of people, were scoring them as, 5 out of 5, and those that were scoring lower were still maybe 4 out of 5, so people have really, really found them a valuable and useful place to connect. And the concept being that we read papers, we do e-learning, we hear about what's going on in the world of digital finance, but we don't have a place to talk about what it means necessarily for our country, but what it means for me in my individual day-to-day practice as a digital finance professional in the organization I work in. And that's what a community of practice brings, can bring that focus to. Yeah. And it's also an amazing place to meet someone. You never know who you're going to be sat next to. It could be a completely different organization from you, an organization you've been wanting to partner with or you want to learn more about. And so being able to build those networks with each other is really key, because one of the things that we talk about a lot is digital finance is not banking. It's not, it is actually involves a huge number of professionals from microfinance, the development sector, public sector, regulation, ministries of finance, banking, mobile money. There are so many fintechs, I can't miss them either. There's so many people involved that there's not often a space that brings all of those people together to say, hey, we're an inclusive digital finance profession. What can we be thinking of? How can we be working together? How can we innovate? How can we learn from each other rather than potentially being in our own space, or even worse, being competitive with each other? This, the concept is very much to try and create equity amongst peers so we can share and learn from each other. And, I really love that aspect of communities of practice. And that's what we've seen happening and growing over time.
Yeah. And I mean, I can only echo that. And even from my personal experience, in the times that I've previously visited communities of practice, I think, they started out, as you said, very much aligned with peer-to-peer learning spaces where, alumni of the courses could talk through what they were learning in the program, how it related to their specific markets. But what we saw evolving over time was this space where it was safe, because it wasn't, a forum that was being used to discuss regulation or, influence or anything. It was a safe space where people could talk openly and as colleagues, as peers in a course, so, and that then evolved. And I think what we've seen over time is that, there has been ecosystem harmonization taking place because of the connections that are being made in these communities of practice. And in the conversations that I've had with people who have attended these communities of practice, the biggest value that they get out of it is that human connection, and having a space where, it doesn't matter if you are competing in the market on a business front, when you're in these communities of practice, you are just peers. And
we've got some amazing examples. I mean, I'm just going to give you a few here to just add highlights. But we had someone who really wanted to digitize their SACCO, their savings group, were struggling to, exactly figure out how to do it. Had the dream, but couldn't quite, make it there. And at a community of practice meeting, they met someone from an M&O who was able to facilitate and support and help that. And that digitization happened, luckily, just before COVID arrived. So it meant that actually during COVID, when things become online, that SACCO, that savings group, really could thrive and continue and support and help its members, thanks to that digitization. So, being in the room with someone from an organization, the right organization that could help you, there. We've also had examples where we've had some of the discussions at these meetings, at these peer gatherings, ended up informing policy and regulation, just because some really amazing thoughts came out of it, and they could be summarized and then sent through to central banks or regulators. We've also had the same thing happening with countries' national financial inclusion strategies, where just that gathering of people together with different thoughts and experience actually has brought amazing outcomes that's been able to start to make a change to the financial inclusion within a country. And it's so amazing to see that what started off as a peer-to-peer conversation is now beginning to actually have real impact, real life impact in products, services, innovation, policy, regulation in country. And that was always the dream, but we didn't know if we could ever get there. But how amazing is it that we've made that journey? And not only have we made that journey, the other really exciting journey is that these community of practices are formalizing. So they are moving from just being a DFI community of practice, which is obviously wonderful, but they are now forming digital finance professional associations in their own, legally registered in their own country. So a body, and taking responsibility for some of that continuous professional development within country. So these organizations are putting on webinars, events, or working with others to keep capacity building professionals in their country, but also really importantly are starting to advocate for improved systems, processes, policy, regulation, practices to really try and drive the uptake of digital finance and increase digital financial inclusion within countries. And that's really amazing, because it is not easy to go from being a community of practice to an association. There's a lot of work involved, legal registration, logo, branding development. You need to put yourself out there. People need to know you exist. You need a team of people who are willing to, for free, voluntarily give their time to create and generate these associations. But amazingly, 13 of our 20 country-based associations have now been developed, and the others are forming this year. So it's been, we're now able to make even more traction, because community of practice was a more informal space for chatting, and we've kept that kind of peer-to-peer informality of the conversation, but by creating a registered digital finance professional association body, we can now have a little bit more leverage within those markets to make impact and change.
That's incredible. And I think when we think about comprehensive capacity building, this is exactly what we mean. It's not just about one piece of the puzzle. You've actually got to look at it from a holistic point of view and say, the end is not just people being trained. The end is people being trained, human connections being made, or capabilities being built, human connections being made, and then formalized professions emerging from this. So it's incredible that you've seen this journey happening firsthand.
It's been an amazing journey, and and it is always going to be a journey, right? That's the one thing I've really learned over the last couple of years, is you can never stop learning, growing, changing. Capacity building is not, as you said, a course, the issuing of a certificate and you tick in the box and you move on. It is continual. So what we're doing in these associations is going to continue to grow. We have to keep abreast of what's happening out there to stay relevant, and that relevance really is important, as well as that impact. That there is absolutely no point of us having the skills and knowledge if we don't then actually use them for the good of our countries, for financial inclusion, whatever it is that we're particularly passionate about or we want to contribute to. We have now, through these associations, a more collective voice, and I think that's part of the importance of this, as well as when you are trying to make a change, in a country or across continents, if you can bring multiple stakeholders, together and have some sort of joint collective view, that is far, far stronger than one person being on their own trying to make their voice heard. So that really excites me about what we can achieve with these associations, is actually bringing change, but also really trying to harness that now we have this amazing local capacity built in many countries across Africa and Asia. And we should be using their expertise, their information, their knowledge, their passion. And that really excites me about, we no longer necessarily have one or two key experts on these topics, but we've created hundreds of pockets of experts, in countries who are able to strengthen their digital finance ecosystems and, improve financial inclusion.
Which is essentially what we're here to do, right? That's our vision and our mission. So it's great to see it being realized. But I think, one thing I pick up there is, as you say, having all of these pockets of expertise now, I think maybe this moves us nicely towards the the alliance, which, you are CEO of, and I imagine is going to play a very important role in helping organizations globally access this local talent.
Absolutely. So what I'm really happy about is this concept of the alliance came from the association members themselves. So it's not something that I dreamed up. It's actually sort of a bottom up, which I think is actually a really exciting part and a part of this story, right? So when the associations were forming, one of the things that, because they came from the community of, a lot of them came from the community of practices, we all knew each other. And one of the things I love, and one of my favorite groups to be in, is our COP of COP facilitators. Which we've created this amazing community of people that lead their communities in different countries, and we all share, chat, learn from each other. And as we started to form these associations, that sharing and learning from each other was being even more important. There were legalities involved, there's financials, there's corporate governance, there's marketing, there's how do you attract members, how do you get that respect and credibility. There's so much we need to learn from each other in that space. And so providing that space for people to connect and share their association forming journeys and their impact was really important. And originally that was housed under Digital Frontiers. But I think what's really exciting is, that now we've started to think that maybe it should be a separate body, a body called the Alliance of Digital Finance Associations. And we began thinking about that back in 2020. We actually had a number of people who were forming associations to start to put together what could be a constitution for the Alliance, where we could go with it. And then over the last year or so, we created a body that exists because each of its members, so we have founding members, and obviously had new members since, but the founding members signed sort of bilateral agreements with each other that formally created the Alliance of Digital Finance Associations back in September 2021. So we're a very new organization, but the plan is that we can kind of provide that sharing and learning and support to one another so that in-country associations can thrive. But I think the other really important part of that is actually providing a look outwards. So, actually sort of providing a route in. So if we had a big global organization who wanted to do work in 2 different African countries and 2 different Asian countries, they would come to the Alliance, and then the Alliance would filter that connection and also support that process of that global organization working with those local organizations. And trying to sort of bring a global voice to the digital finance profession, because we've seen that that's what people want, and having a voice to try and improve things and make impact really resonates a lot with people, despite the fact that majority of people do this as they're not even as a paid thing, as something they do voluntarily. It's actually that impact that is driving people to want to be part of these organizations. So the Alliance will be, or is, the home of those associations, but also is going to be there to try and inspire partnerships, collaboration, try and sort of catalyze innovation within the space, and bring people together to have that global voice as to what the digital finance profession should be focusing on, and maybe things around ethics of being a digital finance professional as well.
So I mean, it all sounds amazing, and really I think probably impact that we couldn't have even seen at the start, levels of impact, and I think most importantly, having this pool of talent, of human capacity on the ground, in market, where they know their local context problems, all of those sorts of things can only accelerate helping solve some of these crucial issues. So, which then also leads me, I guess, to, if we've done this in digital financial services, we've seen the level of impact we can have. We now have other programs that we are implementing aligned with gender equality, etc. So in your view, I'm curious to know if you think that we have a model that is replicable and scalable and can be used across these other, because if we look at the SDGs, there are several crucial issues and topics on the agenda that need to be solved. Do you believe that this is a model that we can take from a capacity building perspective and apply across these other verticals?
Well, I'm going to give you what I think our community are telling us, right? So we have somewhere between 15 to 20,000 digital finance professionals from over 100 countries coming to our webinars, being part of our groups, being part of our communities, accessing, our resources. So I would say that if we can get that many people coming to our digital finance ones, it tells me that this is something that people find engaging, useful, and want to belong to. And I can't see why we wouldn't be able to replicate this across other similar kind of, newly emerging professionals, because it's at that kind of that cutting edge, that new frontier, that new profession, that the need for information, the need for learning, the need for having peers and connecting and chatting with people is even greater. Yeah. And so I think that is a really good reason why, yes, it will work for other frontiers. We're already trying this and trying to build the same kind of model, in gender equity. Obviously, when we're looking at things, the topic is slightly different, but the sort of the recipe around what encompasses a community, what encompasses that continuous professional development is the same. Yeah. And I think what's really also really vital is that often we think that these things are a small bit of someone else's job. Community management doesn't take much time and doesn't need much effort, but actually what we need is really strong regular communication that comes and really strong focal points of the community. And I think that that's what made our recipe successful for digital finance. And if we can do the same sort of recipe, I truly believe that this will be an important part to support new professions emerging. And for us to be able to make a genuine, significant, contribution towards the achievement of the SDGs.
Well, I think you've just wrapped us up very nicely there, Sarah. I must say I'm always in awe of the work that the community and the CPD team do. It really goes a long way in helping us achieve our vision and mission. And I, for one, certainly can't wait to see this model being replicated across many other new emerging professions, and us marching towards helping achieve those SDGs. So thank you for sharing all of your knowledge, Sarah. We really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to many more conversations.
Thank you so much for having me, Deborah. And anyone listening, I encourage you, if you're not part of our community, obviously from this conversation, you must know by now that you're missing out. So do join in. We'll put some links in the description below that you can reach out and start to connect with us and your peers. Thank you so much.
Great. Cheers.
Bye.